Brian Wilson, Mary Catherine Ham, Brian Neiman, today's newsmakers, and you, the Morning Majority. 105.9 FM, AM 630. WMAL.
6:37 on the Morning Majority. Former UN Ambassador John Bolton's on the line. Mr. Ambassador, good morning.
Good morning. Glad to be with you.
Well, we're now past the 10-year mark of the war in Afghanistan. I wanted to get your take on where you think the war stands today and where are we moving forward. Do you think that if there is a new president next year, especially a Republican president, that the footprint would be expanded, or do you think that footprint is only going to get smaller no matter what happens in 2012 election?
Well, I think a couple things to set the context. Number one, it's true we've been in Afghanistan since just after 9/11 to overthrow the Taliban and al-Qaeda for what they did to us on 9/11. But the war has had a lot of changes apace during that period of time. Mm-hmm. So it's not been a constant struggle. In fact, some would say that's part of the problem. We haven't paid enough attention to it. I think now we're in a very difficult period because the Taliban and al-Qaeda can see that we're, under the Obama administration, determined to draw down the U.S. and NATO presence. And, the Taliban have a saying, you have the watches, we have the time. Mm-hmm. And so they're fully prepared to wait and try and take advantage of this. They've shown that they've got the capacity to strike all over the country, including just a few weeks ago at the U.S. Embassy and NATO headquarters in the capital city, Kabul. And equally important, what's going on in Pakistan has a direct impact on what is happening and what will happen in Afghanistan, because elements of the Pakistani military have been supporting Taliban and other radical groups in Afghanistan for a long time, and we're still not dealing adequately with that problem.
But do you think there will ever be a time when the Taliban doesn't have the time? And by that I mean no matter how long you wait in order to get out or what you do in the country, the Taliban will still be there and will still have the ability to go in and undo what we have done.
No, I don't think so. I think this is a question in part for people living in Afghanistan and in the border area of Pakistan, is they're trying to decide, just the average people, the peasants, the villagers, the farmers, mm-hmm. who's going to win. And if they think that we're going to withdraw and the Taliban is still going to be there, it's a pretty easy calculus for them. On the other hand, if they think we're going to win, the calculus changes. And that's why this artificial withdrawal along a set time schedule, I think, is a loser for the United States and risks having Taliban and al-Qaeda come back and put us exactly in the position we were in before 9/11, where they've got a base of operations to conduct terrorist attacks worldwide.
I want to talk about Hugo Chavez. You would think the guy has his hands full right now in that he's undergoing cancer therapy, but apparently he has time and all of that, and also running a country to criticize America once again. And he says that these anti-Wall Street protesters are being, put upon and terrorized and repressed by those of us who disagree with him in this country. I guess the larger question I have, though, is what do you think will happen should, Hugo Chavez not make it through this cancer treatment? What will happen in that part of the world?
Well, I think we have to recognize, and collectively in the U.S. we have not recognized, Hugo Chavez is a threat to us. He's a threat to the fragile democracies in the region. Mm-hmm. It's not entirely clear what ideology swims around inside his skull, but it's not one that's congenial to us. He's set up ties with the Iranians, given that Venezuela has the world's second largest supply of uranium in the ground. That's all bad news. He's funded radical groups all over the Western Hemisphere. And his way of looking at things is something that's very threatening to us, and yet we have not taken him seriously. I think that the most likely outcome after he dies, and people think that's going to happen fairly soon, given the spread of the cancer, is we have to help the Venezuelans reestablish a representative government and focus on what they need to do, which is repairing their oil industry that Chavez has not reinvested in these last 10 years. Because I think that will help eliminate the threat.
Would there be an openness to that, you think?
Well, I think at this point the majority of Venezuelans recognize that Chavez has been undermining their economy for a long time. The problem is they've not been able to agree among themselves. When they're given a clear target, Chavez, as on constitutional referenda, Chavez doesn't get a majority. But in head-to-head contest with other presidential nominees, he's able to win, and that division is something he's exploited for a long time.
Ambassador, I wanted to ask you about 2012 a little bit. You had thought about running partly to be a voice on foreign policy. I wonder how you think views are shaping up. Romney recently did a speech at the Citadel. He released this huge list of foreign policy advisors that some are calling a shadow National Security Council. How do you think? How do you feel about how that's shaping up?
Well, I still don't think we've got nearly the conversation about national security and international issues that we need. I'm glad Governor Romney made that speech and that he's put together an advisory team. I think it's time for the other candidates to do the same. You know, you don't have a debate on foreign policy just by giving one speech. Look at how much attention has been devoted to the economy, and understandably so. But you know, we're electing a president who's going to serve from 2013 to 2017, and you know, hopefully by then our economy will be restored, and we're going to be facing challenges around the world we don't even know exist at this point. We need to know how the candidates feel about America's role in the world. We need a chance to judge them, because once they're in office, there isn't any taking back what happened.
Well, how about a challenge that we haven't talked about in a while? North Korea. They've been kind of quiet, which always raises my eyebrows a little bit. What's going on with North Korea? Or have we just forgotten about them?
Well, I think every indication is North Korea is simply continuing with its nuclear weapons program. Some months back, they unveiled a new uranium enrichment facility with highly sophisticated centrifuge capabilities. Every indication is they continue to work with Iran and others, spreading their nuclear weapons and ballistic missile technology. The only good thing you can say about the Obama administration's policy is that it's a slight improvement on the Bush administration policy. At least they're not rushing to make concessions to North Korea the way the Bush administration was in its last 2 years. But by the same token, as you rightly point out, they are not paying attention to the threat. And so for 2.5 years, North Korea has just been steadily adding to its capabilities. A lot of speculation in Asia that they're getting close to a third nuclear test. I don't know the answer there, but you can bet they're working with the Iranians on figuring out how to put those warheads on top of ballistic missiles that could have a potentially a global range. So the North Korean threat is not just a threat in Northeast Asia, it's a global threat, and we're simply not addressing it adequately. That's one thing I'd like to hear from Republican candidates. What are you going to do about North Korea?
Ambassador Bolton, always good to have you on the program. Thanks for coming on.